you go.
Jazz Cabbage. Adam Burke, Mr. Hashbash is here, and Rick Thompson's here to get things started. We're going to be joined by a few different people, though, throughout the course of the show to get on a couple different topics of interest. So we'll get started, and as those people come on, we'll get into different conversations. I know we were talking before the show started that there's a minor update on the Beardus situation. I kind of wanted to get out there. There was the article in Ganjapreneur too that I thought was interesting. I think Rick, you posted it on one of the pages or whatever. I had seen it and started looking into it. That was about states separating from some of the 280E implications for the federal tax code that causes issues for writing things off, and that's really for cannabis businesses.
Yeah.
There's a development at True Leave, which is more of a national story that we talked about, but I think Stacy might actually be getting some time and jumping on and trying to update us on that. There are some developments. Basically, that's the company that had they have storefronts there too, but they had a cultivation facility or processing facility in which somebody died. There's ongoing issues with that, and we wondered if they're pulling out of a whole state where that took place had something to do with it. And I think it does, but we'll get all that update. We can talk to Stacy a little bit later. So,
yeah, she always has interesting extra information that we don't get from the regular media. Stacy's a great source.
Yeah. And somebody who's like really kind of giving some energy to a side of things that has been kind of lacking as much perspective and attention that it should have been getting.
Well, it's flashy to see big numbers like $30 billion, $33 billion in sales this year, but we oftentimes overlook the human factor, which is a labor market and the people that are actually working and generating that $33 billion.
Right.
And that's where Stacy specializes, worker relations and things like that. She's so good, and she's
Conditions,
so connected.
I would agree. So what do we know? There was a hearing, not normally an issue for even any attendance at all, or people don't want to listen to with Beardus, but judge did say, I don't want any of that this one. There was some back and forth, and then there was recently an announcement. So that's some development. I know it's not that deep, but let people know about what happened there.
Just a little bit of background, of course. Beardus was hit with, at that time, what we believe to be the largest recall of cannabis in American history in 2021. And they filed several court challenges. The first one got about half of the recalled product returned back to the market. And the second one was a retaliatory lawsuit against the Cannabis Regulatory Agency for unfairly trying to persecute them. The Cannabis Regulatory Agency, of course, countersued. So that's the case that's going through the court right now, determining whether or not Beardus did in fact violate rules of the Cannabis Regulatory Agency using their proprietary method of determining THC potency, which seems heavily inflated, and most people in the industry would agree. The first 2 weeks of this trial were held in secret without media exposure, and that's very unusual. Although the court in this instance does have the right to make that decision, and they did make that decision and announced it ahead of time. When media companies and institutions like the Detroit News and MLive found out those hearings were closed, they had a fit, and they absolutely jumped all over the court saying, how are you denying access to the public to this important information? There were several news articles. I was featured in one, and it really sort of broke the ice. The judge reversed his decision on keeping the hearings closed, and the next 2 weeks of hearings, which are coming up very quickly, will be done with media in the room. And the judge determined that the past 2 weeks of hearings, which had been closed previously, that they would give either transcripts or video of those meetings to media as well. Now, we're waiting for those media outlets to process those 2 weeks and tell us exactly what happened there, because as private citizens, we don't have access to that. But it will be fascinating to see exactly what the CRA has on Beardus to suggest that their method of THC determination is invalid. And it's also curious to see what Viridis has on the CRA to say that individuals acted with malicious intent and intentionally tried to harm that one specific company, Viridis, because they were such a dominant force in the testing market here in Michigan. They did test 60 to 70% of, according to their own statements, 60 to 70% of all of the cannabis on the market in Michigan at one time. And I know the CRA was interested in spreading the love out amongst the entire testing industry instead of letting it be concentrated in just one.
So I guess there's a couple things real quick, Adam. One is that the microbial stuff is going to be, a difficult task to, I think, to overcome. This THC thing has some couple different elements to it that they might be able to,
work
use
around
their advantage, for this one. But microbial thing seems pretty straightforward. But then again, I'm not going to pretend I know the outcome of that stuff.
17 people were sickened by cannabis that was under the recall, according to the cannabis regulatory agency on records. 17 people were sickened by that, so that's going to be tough for them to justify that.
But yeah, to them, and I'm also wondering too, real quick. Then I'll let you go, Adam. If the information from the closed hearing is going to be immediately allowed, or people have to still FOIA that and pay for transcripts, or however that may work.
The media company. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I would just have to think that there's a document somewhere that was sent by email or handwritten and sent by carrier pigeon that says, hey, if you come to work with us, we can guarantee you higher numbers. We can guarantee you a lower failure rate on your microbial. And that's why things were closed to the public and the media. I have to assume there's they call it a smoking gun, unfortunately.
Well, if that's the case, they came out, the people from Viridis came out right away and said, we're not the ones that are saying don't make this public. We're fine with everything being public. Yeah. So Harry Barash is going to hang out with us. We're going to talk at some point a little bit more directly with him about the networking events he's been putting on, about the social media pages, bringing some businesses together, the newsletter and the Evolve platform there, and being involved in the real estate side of stuff with the Farming Group and other things. So we'll get to that kind of like more direct conversation at some point. But in the meantime, he's going to hang out and discuss stuff with us. You're familiar with this Viridis situation, aren't you, Harry?
Yeah. Obviously, they've been under scrutiny for a long time, and, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? And, everybody should, it almost seems like in the testing world, people are guilty until they're proven innocent, unfortunately.
Well, I can remember a few years back, and what lab wasn't guilty?
Well, yeah, that's a great question.
Yep. So that's curiosity about this court case. And recognizing again that there are 4 individuals from the Cannabis Regulatory Agency named in the lawsuit, and for their purposes of privacy, they may wanted to have kept it a closed hearing. But I am still curious to see what Viridis has on the CRA, just as much as I am curious to see what CRA has on Viridis. It's entirely possible
that said, like a case
fooled around a little bit.
There's still facts involved here, and like if there was some malicious intent, I guess, or some process, inappropriateness along the way, targeting Viridis or whatever. There might be some of that in there, and that's being addressed. And if that turns out to be the case, it turns out to be the case. That separately happened. That doesn't invalidate facts that can be discovered here, and the way that the processes took place on Viridis' end, and why there's still a lot of concern. So it could be a lot of things happening here at once. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 2 separate issues. When you talk about the recall, that's one separate thing, and if you're talking about approval of the Viridis' proprietary method for determining THC levels in cannabis, that is a separate thing, and those both could be decided independently of each other by the judge.
The potential inappropriate behavior by department people, which we don't know the outcome yet, but the potential does not mean that that Viridis didn't actually do anything. They might even prove conclusively that you handled this incorrectly, and that's bad, but that doesn't change the facts. It also might be discovered throughout this.
Well, could they also be making the argument that they weren't treated the same way the other labs who have gotten in similar trouble were treated?
I think
don't
that's a
know.
standard legal. That's a standard legal thing, though, to say that you're singling us out, and this is the reason you're singling us out, and here's my proof that you're singling us out. That's kind of the core of what they're talking about. There was a time when the CRA did discuss not wanting to have one single testing company handle 60 to 70% of the state's volume for a lot of different reasons. But that sounds an awful lot like selective enforcement, actually. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. I have that exact same hoodie, Harry, by the way. I have that. Is that the clear?
Isn't it so comfortable?
Oh, I love it. So great.
Clear,
Yeah.
long time participant in this world, from the previous licensed world to into the licensed world. The Clear, that was a high standard product early on.
Yeah, this is like the perfect thickness, and it fits like a glove on my big belly.
I was gonna say it fits. Nowadays, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Hey, so in the meantime, we were joined by Stacy Wachowski. We're going to get to the updated True Leave story pretty soon. I know you're familiar with Viridis, though, too.
We should talk
Stacy.
about the.
Oh yeah, I'm listening in. I haven't really kept up with the whole Viridis thing, so I'm definitely
Okay, so that's what we know. That's the development right now. We all have to wait to hear more. And then I think that. So we have the Skyman thing, and I also wanted to give Adam an opportunity to bring up some local news.
Cool.
Oh,
I missed Medical Mondays last night, also, and I probably would have heard about it then.
yeah. I mean, what I really want to talk about is the stupidity of the players, not so much what happened. Unfortunately, last night, Detroit Cannabis is the name of the guy, Sam. He was shot and murdered in the parking lot of the Russell Industrial Complex.
Sorry to
But
hear that.
and that's a horrible thing. But that's not the problem. The problem is people in the industry, whether it be the licensed industry or the black market, are willing to meet people that they met off the internet. And they're willing to meet them in places that they might think are public or open or going to be seen, but they don't know who these people are. And there was a time when I used to get these phone calls. Hey, my name's Joe. I'm sick. Do you know where I can get some weed? And I'm sorry, Joe. I don't even know what weed is. Of course, I didn't have any friends named Joe. But our whole world seems to gone from this illegal spot where we wouldn't talk, you wouldn't wear a weed shirt to the dentist like I did today. But you also didn't talk to your dentist about smoking weed either. And we went from this hidden world to now this open world, and society's not there. Society is still treating this like, again, people think you get into the weed game because you're going to make a lot of money. I don't know anybody I don't know any of the five of us that would back that up. You could make a lot of money, but you're not guaranteed to make a lot of money. And
Harry's exceptionally wealthy, so I think that's the distinction here.
I tell you, everyone I talk to is, in the licensed game is definitely not making a lot of money. There's some that are, I'd say under 10%, 15%, 20% maybe that are making money.
And
the rest
and
are breaking even or losing money.
Yeah, James is saying break even at best, and that is common. I mean, I can vouch for that a little bit.
And Adam's point about ambush tactics still being prevalent both in the regulated and unregulated market. You might not think it's prevalent in the regulated market, but in 2022, the CRA issued a warning about cannabis secure transporters who were delivering to addresses which were not registered as dispensary addresses to drop off product. They were being ambushed at that time. And I don't know if anyone has ever heard from that, but that was a multiple instance where the bad guys got over on the regulated market the same way Adam's referring to in this other instance.
And I'm not I mean, I don't even like talking about this, but it's reality. And if you see what's happened in California, you know what's coming here.
Desperate times make desperate people.
And, there were some crazy things happened in California. Everything from just bold ripoffs where they walked into stores 6, 7 deep to after hours break-ins. We've seen a few of those here. Interesting enough, we saw those before it was even legal, which I find very interesting in Detroit. But this is a real business. This is a real industry. This is a real game, and people really need to treat it that way, because a great guy who would have gladly handed everything over was killed, and fortunately, it sounds like he actually hit one of the two robbers. So,
Have they been identified and apprehended, or are they still out there?
I assume the one that was hit was identified. There's one that I think disappeared. There were 7 Michigan State Police cars, an ambulance, and 2 canine officers roaming the property last night looking for this guy. So,
Well, the Russell Industrial Center in Detroit, for those that don't know, probably not a super well lit parking lot, and I doubt that they have camera coverage that covers the entire section. So it's possible there's just no video evidence of this.
and it's just sad because it's just starting. That's the sad part. And I hate to put that on the industry. But it's just starting, these type of things.
Well, this has been going on for a while. I mean, the problem is that people don't report these crimes
Right.
many times because both parties are doing something illegal and they don't want to incriminate themselves.
Right. That's what we come from. I mean, we listen, the reason there's no bad guy list, and when I say a bad guy list, I mean industry people. The reason there's no bad guy list is because we come from a game where you don't talk about people. So what happens is a guy doesn't pay his bill, a guy doesn't, his weights are off, whatever the situation, and everybody doesn't know about it. In the
There
game.
are some private lists that have been aggregated that
Those
were
are all-
circulating, but private.
Those are private. Let one of those get leaked and watch the lawsuits happen.
Right. Very litigious society, and if your integrity is impugned by someone saying you don't pay your bills, that might be a cause of action. And right now, as Harry mentioned, very few cannabis companies are profitable. Throw the weight of a lawsuit against your assets, and then see exactly how unprofitable you become over the next 6, 8, 12, 24 months as you try to defend yourself in court. So it doesn't behoove anyone to make that statement, so-and-so's not paying their bills, because of the potential consequence. But we all know that is an issue. In fact, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, in their new proposed administrative rules adjustments, included one that said a denying of licensure to cannabis companies who demonstrably do not pay their bills. Now, that's so treacherous to me. I can't imagine that the CRA could actually make that a workable program. How would you prove that? Is it 70% paying your bills and 30% not? Is it 90% paying your bills and 30% not?
Who's the clearinghouse?
It would leave them open to incredible lawsuits if they denied someone licensure.
It seems like existing factors and systems in place.
Because they were asked to put it there by industry. Industry spoke up so loudly about this problem with bills being paid, the CRA had to put it in that admin rule thing. Go ahead, Jamie.
No, just existing responses to the situation when people don't pay their bills are consequential. I mean, I don't know what additional things are.
What we've seen several companies get sued for non-payment of bills, even those not in receivership. Go ahead.
No, it's funny because, I mean, it's not funny at all. But there was a time where we were talking about not paying your traffic tickets. You weren't going to get a license.
That's so true.
I mean, that's
The policy was changed too.
Part of it.
And now you can be a complete deadbeat and still get your license.
And it's
given.
420. If anybody's in the position, unlike myself, to burn, I'm on a licensed parcel, and we don't do that here.
Well, you can suck up my smoke secondhand through the computer, then, Jamie.
Okay, well, it's
I'll
The-
also secondhand that, being here in North Carolina with this fake ass THCA bullshit that they sell in these stores. Oh my God. Hey, question though. So as far as licensing is concerned, has anybody's license been revoked? Like besides, what happened with that place that was in Flint where they were caught selling all of that those free pre-rolls or whatever it was. Has anybody been revoked at all?
I pay attention to the disciplinary action reports, and I don't know about revocation.
Suspended.
Suspended, many of them.
mine is
And
suspended. Yeah.
if you have your license revoked, there's an appeal process. So even if that was the case, it might take a while before that actually becomes effective. But Green Culture in Flint did have a revocation. Boy, I'm just not familiar with any
Locally,
other-
it's been yanked before too, but typically, things
Given back.
negotiated or figured out, and get it back.
Yeah, local action is probably more responsible for closures than the Cannabis Regulatory Agency is itself.
That's the crux of the combining of the license thing, as I see it. Now, in reality, it's being discussed, and it'll probably get introduced, and there'll be some discussions on it, and it's expected. Just speaking from a few people in Lansing, that there's going to be, as was the case a couple sessions ago, people wanting too many things in there. There's only like a short list of things it takes to combine them. But the biggest issue, if we were to get through that, would be those places that only very specifically wanted medical programs in their township or whatever, and they would then either have to go through the hassle or challenges of saying no to those licenses anymore, or allowing it to switch over to adult use.
They could always combine the two licensing systems, but grandfather in existing medical programs. I don't know how many communities there are around Michigan that are medical only, but it's more than we might think. So this affects, let's just ballpark 20 to 40 different communities out of the 160 some that we have currently that have said yes to cannabis businesses that are exclusively medical. That's a lot of people to tell that you have to switch. And I'm sorry that your opinion doesn't matter, but you now have to have a legalized adult use cannabis facility in your town, even though you only wanted medical. I don't know how well that would go over.
Well,
That's agreed.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I see as being a real stick. I mean, that has to be a sticking point. There will be many others, but those will be because a lot of people are trying to utilize this as an opportunity to do stuff that we're going to have to.
And again, there's
really
no
examine.
there's no tax money coming back to medical marijuana facilities. The only tax money that comes back, the $56,000 that each community is used to receiving for every one of the cannabis retail locations or micro businesses that they license. Those don't benefit you if you're medical only.
The arguments that we made in Colin, and we had an adjoining township that said, "Hey, we appreciate getting this money. That it's really helpful." We had a supervisor from the township over, and weren't able to convince people that they should adopt they already had the medical in use for a while. All the surrounding areas have it. People have it delivered to their homes from those surrounding areas. People drive from that township into the other townships to get, it didn't make any sense at all, but that's still what they really wanted.
Society resists change it doesn't want to have. Go ahead.
I always thought it was a matter of time before the neighbors who said no would eventually see the dollars and say yes. I really thought that would become a popular thing in what we're doing, that people would literally see the money driving through their community and the cannabis driving back. And how could you say no to that?
Well, look at the lawsuits that have happened in areas like, where Loom goes in and they're like, hey, we didn't get the license that we wanted. We're going to sue the shit out of Pinckney. I mean, that's definitely a real threat.
They lost that one.
Well,
Yes,
yeah,
they did.
lose
They
that
did.
one.
Yeah, but they made
but-
the city spend a lot of money
They
defending.
did. That's been their assholishness has been on the local level mainly. Yeah.
Exactly. And for a small municipality, I mean, that can be, that can be really detrimental. So, I think that that's definitely a factor into being like, if it's already in the surrounding areas, let's just kind of, hands off for a minute.
And Michigan has grown really slowly in the number of municipalities that have accepted cannabis businesses. At this particular point, it's growing. What, Harry, you keep
Well-
track of this too. It can't be growing more than 10 to 15 a year at this point, right? The number of municipalities saying yes to adult use retail.
There's still some activity. There's still some talks of some municipalities that are rumored to be opting in, but it's not at the same pace that it used to be.
Pontiac's still a mess. It's difficult to get anything done in that community, and northern Michigan is very slow. Initially, some communities were very fast to adapt.
The east side of the state, a lot of those little townships up and down the east side of the state saw it as a great opportunity. They went in early and often on it.
Adam, you were trying to get in a second ago. We should let you get in.
No, I'm sorry. I'm okay. For some reason, my mute button disappeared. So I have no control. So my wife walked in and wanted to know.
Oh, so by default,
I
let's
have
keep you muted then. That sounds like the
Oh,
idea.
what a great excuse to use. Okay.
Yeah, I had to make sure that she knew I couldn't mute myself before.
That's hilarious.
All right, so I did want to get to, and we're getting a little more in depth into some of the work that Harry's been doing. I think people be interested in some of these things, and I would appreciate the networking opportunity myself. But I want to get in the discussion on Skyman a little bit. That's been in the news too. There went to receivership. There's been some developments and stuff like that. I know that you're kind of up to date, Rick. If you don't mind bringing people up to date.
And of course, everyone knows Skymint is a Michigan cannabis company which has had numerous problems. Some self-generated, some created by, this incredibly ridiculous pattern of borrowing that they had at untenable interest rates compounded monthly. So they're in receivership, one of the largest cannabis companies in Michigan. They owe about $135 million at this point to Tropics and another bunch of money to someone else. And the receiver has decided to try and sell all of their assets as a single bulk in order to try and generate as much money as possible. That's currently 29, I believe, dispensing locations and 2 cultivation centers. The receiver already skived off some of the biggest properties that they had and is trying to sell them on an individual basis. So the thing is, in order to satisfy this bid, if you'd like to buy all of these cannabis retail locations, you first of all have to pay off Tropics 130, and then you also have to pay the 129 that they're currently asking for it. So that's a big thing, or 109 rather. So that's a big bulk, except if you're Tropics, where you really only have to bid 109 and you don't have to pay yourself back for the money that you owed. So it's entirely possible the Canadian company, Tropics Ltd, will be taking control of the Skymint assets here in Michigan. Now that's a pretty big way to walk into the market, 20 plus stores all at once. Now realize that probably some of those will get sold off individually in order to generate some revenue from this particular transaction. But even if they retain half, even if they keep 15, that still makes them a big player. So this is something that could happen. I'm not sure how quickly these things go down, but I'm imagining before the end of the year or potentially at the early part of next. So there may be a brand new player on the market, and that would be intriguing to me.
Well, plus they're Canadian, which means they've already dealt with the governmental nonsense that's happened in Canada over the last few years to show you the ups and downs of the industry.
Canadian company Fire and Flower, which has 90 retail outlets in Canada, just filed for corporate protection from the Canadian government because they're going to be bankrupt and they're going to have to sell their assets. That's a huge blow to the Canadian market.
I mean, I know the guys from the greenhouse in Amsterdam, they pulled out of Canada because mid-crop the law would change. The rules would change mid-crop.
We had that during the implementation of the original medical licensing scenario
Well,
So many
deserve-
roller coaster policy changes.
People were speculating during the 2008 campaign for medical marijuana that would cause a ton of people to come over from Ontario to take advantage of our medical marijuana laws because the proposal was so much more favorable than Ontario's current cannabis laws were at that time. But you're right, Adam. It could be a Canadian company, but again, most Canadian companies have American counterparts. So they may be headed out in Edmonton, but they also have an office in Chicago. So they can conform to all of the American laws, with all the American everything. But all those
They're the natural buyer, really.
Right. I'm not opposed to a foreign owned property. That doesn't bother me in the least.
No, but yeah, the Canadian company can successfully negotiate here. Although,
Rick, I remember a while back you had said something that was, simply put, but very profound. You said, in an instant, a company can come in that doesn't have a presence in Michigan and all of a sudden take over a big part, or not a big part, but a portion of the market. And this is one of those opportunities where last week, we were talking about True Leave, and comment was made that, well, they're not really here in Michigan, right? Well, this is one of those instances, not saying that True Leave is going to be coming in, but this is an example of when something like that could take place. So it is so important to keep an eye on what's going on in other states, because it is absolutely relevant to what's going on in the industry as a whole right now. Everything is volatile. And when these situations come up, here's where those opportunities lie at. Who is going to come in and take this over? Even if it's half of these dispensaries, that is still 15 dispensaries around the state. Loom has what, 20 something? That's a lot. And, they're kind of closing some down and opening them up and closing them down. And
I think there's 30, but some are not operable at the moment.
Right,
Waiting for different licensing to happen and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So what is going to happen? Like, I have not really looked into how this is going to affect employees or the closures that are maybe likely to occur with SkyMint, but this is a lot of job loss that could happen too. Also, like, let's say another company comes in, let's say it's a Curaleaf, right? If you work for some of these facilities, how is that going to change the way that things are operating in the facility, right? What is your workday going to look like? What is the health and safety hazards going to look like? What are your worker protections going to look like? All of these things can change. If that changes for the workers, if it changes in the cultivation facility, it is going to change for the consumer at the end of the day.
The action of a receiver is much faster than a traditional real estate transaction. So it's entirely possible that someone could buy up a chain of dispensaries here in Michigan, dispensaries, cultivation centers, vertically integrated, it doesn't matter. And that would be a well-publicized move that would take months and months and months to complete, and it would be a slower transition. But the action of a receiver in this particular case implies that there would be a much quicker resolution to that, and that takeover would happen in a much more aggressive time frame.
You wonder if
the worst case scenario for those displaced workers could potentially be there.
So like I'm in Big Rapids right now. We're going to open a store here. This is a small town and it is saturated. I think there's something like, I don't know what there's, like 14 or something.
20? Yeah, so
but some have shut down. Yeah.
20?
Yes. Well, that there have been 20 licenses.
There's like 16.
There's 14 or 16 operating right now, something like that. And there is a SkyMint down the street from here right now. And upon acquiring all these things, I can imagine a company assessing this and saying, okay, we're going to reopen in a few places, but not necessarily everywhere.
I follow your logic. Yeah.
Yeah. They might not want to jump back into this game.
Well, when you start looking at the entire market, you can see which stores are profitable and which are not. And then you can project out which may struggle. And competition is one of the biggest reasons why some of the stores struggle. So
this is a tough market here, but some people are in a position to not have a lot of debt and try out a market and bring a high quality cannabis, low cost approach and see if there's any share available that way without the super high risk that many others have had to come in with and
That seems a
struggle.
natural segue to Harry's segment, though, right? I mean,
It
we talk
does,
about
yeah.
going to the market, and here's a guy who's involved.
We'll
in
get back
cannabis.
to the True Leaf thing, but exactly, we got Harry in real estate, helping networking events, social media, connecting, and things like that, and just take some time to focus on some of that. I was just recently at the Hot Box. You've done, what's it, 4 or 5 of those. I thought I was at every one. You mentioned that you missed one the other night, but those are every time I've been there. They've been helpful and I've been there independently, kind of, and I've been there, while working with 2 different companies. And it's just been a really good opportunity to network and make connections and do what it's intended to do. So that's kind of taken off a little bit, become established, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I started throwing events about a year ago. First event was back in May of last year, and I had an idea, and I kind of wanted to come up with an event where I saw kind of a void in the marketplace in terms of the type of event. There's a lot of events out there. There's concerts, there's panel discussions, there's expos, and I go to all of them, and I get something out of all of them, and I just this particular event just kind of was in my wheelhouse and kind of up my alley, because people would ask me all the time, can you, when prices were $4,000 a pound, can you help me find product? Can you help me find product? And now they're all asking me to help them sell product. And I'm not a broker, and I didn't really want to become one, a flower broker, a product procurement guy. So I decided to throw an event where you have, manufacturers of product and you have buyers of product, and I'm just bringing everybody into the same room where they can see the product, a lot of different SKUs, and sample the product and take samples home with you. So, we're putting together purchasing managers for retail dispensaries and wholesale managers of manufacturers to get products on shelves, and it seems to be working. And people are coming back, and people are, saying good things about it. And we just need to do a better job of our part on our end to streamline the processes and get better. I mean, it's not my full-time job, so I just kind of moonlight, doing it. It's a lot of work. It feels like a full-time job, especially the weeks and weeks leading up to the event. It's definitely very full-time. It's very demanding, and it's very it just really sucks the life out of you, because there's nothing your head is buried in your computer screen. So there's a lot of now you're starting to see events that kind of focus more on bringing the brands together, and I think that's really what the brands want to that's what the brands want to see, is they want to be able to get an ROI on their investment, and that's actually happening, and we can we have testimonials of that happening. I don't have quantitative data of how much sales we've generated or anything like that, but when I reach out to all of my sponsors after the event and retailers after the event, and and ask them how things are going, they're all walking away with new sales and or multiple leads that eventually turn into sales. And
the beginning of relationships in many
That's
cases.
a good way to
yeah,
gauge.
I mean, yeah, so the goal obviously is for that first sale to become a second sale, and then have a permanent place on their shelf, or have a regular spot on their shelf. So it seems to be working, and it's kind of like a farmer's market, if you will, for licensees.
Oh, Harry,
And
the name of your event is the Meat Connect Puff, and you spend a lot of time talking about the meat and a lot of time talking about Connect, but we haven't spent any time talking about the puff yet. There's a new proposed rule change for the Cannabis Regulatory Agency that would say that if you are not selling cannabis, if you're just giving away trade samples, you no longer have to register as an event with them. Would that greatly benefit you and your event?
You know, it all depends on, you know, being able to, so right now there's events that are, you know, the way I get away with what I do right now is because it's held at a consumption lounge. You can bring product into a consumption lounge. You can consume product at a consumption lounge.
Right.
You can leave a facility. You can leave the facility with product. So it's clearly spelled out, you know, in the rules where if you have an event at a consumption lounge, you don't need an event license. So when you have events at, you know, like when you have events at like, you know, the Brooklyn or wherever else they're having these events, the Annex in Detroit, you know, what they're doing is they're manifesting the product to somebody, you know, the event organizer or somebody, and then that product is being given to, you know, people that work there, and then that product is being passed out by those people. So the licensees are not passing out product, right? So they're just there with their, you know, a booth and swag and whatever, but they don't have a full display of their menu, right? Like they have at my event. So if they, you know, if they change that part where you can bring in product, hand out product, you know, and then yes, it will change, you know, it will change the game. I don't necessarily have to have them at Hotbox, but I enjoy having them there. You know, so yeah, I mean, anybody would be able to really be able to duplicate this, you know. I have nothing proprietary.
You know, you work with the MICIA, you're members of the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association. They in turn have some really great networking events that are quarterly for every season, including one of the best, which is in Bel Air, where it's like 3 days and there's 300-400 participants, and it's quite awesome. There usually we get some help with the weather, and you know it's a really good time. And then they get involved in like the other many other events, including with members. And I saw Ida there participating and stuff. And it's part of a larger family of networking, you know, events. And yeah, many people can do it, but there's some really good stuff out there. Some people that have been at it for a long time and kind of hit the time and place and the approach pretty well.
Not everybody.
I will admit to have attending a couple of Harry's events.
That's true.
I have proof. I have pictures, Adam.
We have that photo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that with John Sally one day? I think. Yep.
I mean, and everyone knows I'm not an industry guy, so you know I had the opportunity to check them out. I almost came the other night, to be honest with you. Something.
I wish you would have.
Something popped up and stopped me, but I appreciate the fact that I know that I'm welcome.
And that hasn't happened for Adam for a long time, so it was a special moment.
And I will say that the event license, where they don't allow you to bring cannabis to an event that's a cannabis event, is ridiculous.
That's not a CRA thing. That's not a CRA thing. That's nowhere in the law.
It's just it makes no sense at all.
Well, if you're trying to protect the country's sales while they're there.
As a former black market guy, it makes me want to smuggle a few in when I go to those events.
There is nothing by law that says that. Are you serious?
Absolutely. So it's the discretion of the individual thing. So if you've got, let's just say a House of Dank has sponsored your entire thing and they're selling cannabis at that event, House of Dank might say, okay, I'm going to spend these thousands and thousands of dollars to sponsor, but you are going to not let anybody in with cannabis in their pocket, so that if they want to smoke, they got to get it from us in order to increase that potential revenue.
Similar to what other venues do with alcohol and stuff like that, I guess would be the philosophical
bring
approach
booze
there.
in anywhere. Right. So that's the model there, but that's the discretion of the event organizer. That's not mandated by the state.
And there are major, when I say major, I mean events larger than I've put on. There are major events that are playing that game. That in their advertisement, it says you cannot bring your own cannabis.
No backpacks, no purses over X number size. Everything is subject to search. Yes.
As an event organizer, I would highly recommend you don't publicize those things. You don't talk about those things and you don't do those things. but nobody's paying me, so there was some free advice.
No, Harry, but you know, throwing events are not easy tasks, and finding the right venue is an important one. You were actually able to help modify
I think it's,
the
yeah,
existing location to add a tent out there.
I think you got the right formula there. It's a good part of the networking family, so to speak. I think it's, I really appreciate those events.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm looking at Hot Box to do something. It's a great venue. It's got everything you need if you want to do an event. You know,
The food was pretty good too, man. I was definitely appreciative of the many choices of quality food that was available there. I overwhelmed Harry with that compliment. He had to step off for a second.
There's been some signal interruptions today, but no, it's tough to throw an event. We did 12 Michigan Cannabis Business Development Group events, small business conferences, with full dinners prior to the pandemic. So, I mean, I know
Those at the Radisson and Lansing, man. I mean, all over the state, Flint, Bay City, Traverse City, et cetera. But a lot of the Radisson and Lansing that were great ones. Yep. They were
the
not
Detroit
easy.
event was amazing.
Yeah.
Harry, did
oh,
you ever
the one at the Anthem, yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead,
Harry.
Sorry.
You attended my my Michigan Cannabis Business Development Group conferences, didn't you, before the pandemic? The small business conferences I used to throw in Lansing, and there was one in Detroit.
Yes, I did go to the one in Lansing.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So I mean,
Yep.
not exactly the same. There was no consumption there and no cannabis on site, but
Oh, there was cannabis on
there
site.
was
Not
none
officially.
allowed.
The parking structure got its share. That's for sure.
But that's
it sure did. But yeah,
that's-
it's doing events is tough work.
Yeah, it's a tough game, especially these guys that are doing concerts these days. I mean, that's a really risky game. Especially since it's so contingent on weather. I wouldn't want to be responsible for 10,000 people. My events are 250, and that's a handful. Dealing with the public. My events are obviously B2B. Dealing with the public and dealing with that many people is just a whole another ball game. And but I give these guys credit for trying, because I would never even try that.
No, I don't do outdoor events June, July, or August. I mean, I would never. You could hire me to do your event, but I would never produce an event because you can't count on the weather. It gets a little sketchy. You have to prepare for things that may or may not happen.
Bands insist on payment ahead of time, at least a portion of it, and some of these bands come with some pretty big price tags too. I'm often curious to know exactly how many people attend, because just to use a name, Be Real is there, right? They were going to attend anyway, and Be Real is a bonus. That's nice.
And he'll be at Spark in the Park this weekend.
That artist, how many ticket sales is that artist actually generating for you of people who would not already be coming? So, question becomes, risk versus reward.
I will tell you that a lot of these people are not working for the fee that you might think they're working for. That when you call up and their agent quotes you a fee, you can negotiate that down, especially if it's a weed event, especially if he's going to leave there with pounds of weed or whatever. I mean, I've seen it over the years. That's the game we're in, everybody gets quoted $250,000 for Snoop Dogg. And there's no way that Vehicle City paid anywhere near that for him. But that's what you're quoted when you make the phone call.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the insurance like that you have to get for these events?
Which type of event?
Geez.
Well, what's required?
No.
Well, I can tell you for my event, for
The
5
state
hours.
requires X amount, and sometimes the locals require something different. But go ahead, Harry.
Yeah, for my event for 5 hours, and I had to get a separate policy, even though Hotbox Social has a consumption license, they didn't want to be liable for any guests, so I had to get a separate policy. And my event was $2,900 for 5 hours.
A lot.
And-
So it's just the cost of doing business. I mean, it sucks. It's not fair. It's not right. But you know, it's a necessary part of throwing events, and I can't imagine what a concert insurance would be like.
You can't tell your insurer that you're having a hip hop group. Your rate goes through the roof.
Or heavy metal.
Or heavy
Charlie
metal,
Speckman
right?
from Monroe Street Fair said the same thing too. He says, you know, there are certain types of music genres that if your insurance company thinks that you're going to have them, they believe that it poses an inherent greater
And
risk.
alcohol being on scene jacks up the cost too.
Yeah. Now, there's ways to get around certain things.
For 250 people, that's ridiculous.
Now, these events that are taking place at like, you know, the Annex or places that don't have a cannabis license associated with them, they're not required to have the same policies. So now and they're serving alcohol, right?
Right.
At the same time, which I always thought is a risk, you know, consuming cannabis would be a risk of losing your liquor license. But apparently,
it is.
well, I don't know if it is, because here's another kicker for you. Hotbox Social just applied for a liquor license.
There was some
Correct.
talk about making specific
Community-
changes in law to allow for this. I've heard this discussion most recently. Yeah.
And the
And
cannabis
the community
regulatory
would have
agency
to
said
approve that.
Yep, the CRA says if the locals allow it, then we
Right.
don't care. We don't regulate
Yeah,
alcohol. So
liquor
as long as
license-
locals can be convinced, then you're good to go.
Liquor licenses are under local control, unlike the cannabis license, which is under state control.
So
just-
apparently, this is, you know, becoming, you know, it will become a little bit more of a reality, because, you know, they're losing events to all these places that let you do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
Remember, the former Pine Knob, I guess it's currently Pine Knob, has a big area, a big section sponsored by a cannabis company.
Bloom.
That's definitely a big booze location.
They actually took their name off there.
Oh, good.
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Thank you for
When did
sharing.
that
When-
happen?
Yeah,
When was
yeah, it
that?
happened in the last couple months.
I didn't hear about it either.
Yeah, Loom is no longer the sponsor there.
Good.
Is that a situation where it was just too expensive to maintain that?
I think it was a situation where they knew that they weren't going to get licensed, yeah, in Independence Township or Clarkston or wherever it is,
Yeah.
and they just kind of pulled out.
Do you think they're gonna have to separate alcohol area from cannabis area in at the hot box, or do you know that deeply about it?
Well,
You know,
alcohol,
I would think, you know, there's really nowhere to separate it, right? The way the place lies, the way the place sits today.
But-
Um,
You wanna have
alcohol
to segregate
requires
those
a
two.
separate area. If
You might have to do that now.
If you have a liquor license, you have to separate the liquor, and you cannot take the liquor out of that area into the public for most events.
Or like Hoxeyville did like a couple of years or a couple seasons ago and had the tent inside the event that was just for cannabis. Elsewhere, they did have alcohol and stuff like
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah. You know, Hoxeyville is a good example. In 2022, the State Liquor Commission decided that they would not make a ruling on whether or not you could have the two of them loaded together, because they were going to watch the progress of two events where they had already received permission to have both a smoking area and a liquor area. And apparently they were pretty satisfied with the results. I think Art Beats and Eats this year gets House of Dank smoking tent, if I'm not mistaken, and that's
Yeah.
just all about booze and getting food.
Right. Well, you
So-
can walk through Arts Beats and Eats with your liquor, because they have separated the
They close the streets off and stuff
cannabis,
like that.
and they close the streets off, which makes their fence, for lack of a better.
So-
But
Walk your booze.
I'm pretty anti-alcohol, so you won't see that at any event I'm ever participating in.
You know,
If somebody wants to,
I will
I'm fine
tell
with it.
you-
I'm glad that they can, you know.
I will tell you that one of the things that until the law changes, if you put your liquor license in escrow, so a bar, for instance, has a liquor license. If I want to rent the bar out to hold a weed event, I have to have the bar take the liquor license and go give it to the local police chief so that it's then considered in escrow, at which point they do not have a liquor license, so all their liquor has to be put away. And then we just risk smoking in the building. Come write me that ticket.
I've been to multiple
Also,
events where I was
it
standing at a
takes
bar
away-
ordering a drink while dragging
But
on.
what it does more importantly is it takes away the unwarranted Fourth Amendment search that the police can do because you have a liquor license. If you have a liquor license, they can come into your establishment anytime you're open. If you do not have a liquor license, they are then required to have a warrant.
They can come into cannabis places too, local and state police, to inspect
Yeah,
anything.
that's part of the deal when you get a license. Whether it's
That's
So-
right.
Let me get back on this conversation a little bit here with Harry. So, yeah, networking events working out well, and you also hosted a page. You alluded to it a little bit too to help make connections with people because you were getting requests on things, and that grew up, and you now have like kind of altered platforms a little bit. So say what's going on with the My Cannapros.
Yeah, so my Cannapros is kind of, still trying to figure out what we want it to look like, and what kind of functionality we want from the site. Obviously, we're trying to, keep it community based, and figure out a way to monetize it because I believe it's monetizable, and really create a marketplace that where you can kind of do a lot of things that you do in the group and a lot of things that people would like to do in the group that can't, like buy and sell weed, as well as, just kind of have a more structured menu and a widespread menu where, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to figure out where there's events, if you're, if you want, there could be an event calendar for like vendor days. There could be, people that sell their, used equipment. There could be, any type of assets, so, and there could be obviously a social component as well. We're still trying to create the framework of what we want it to look like. And it's something that, we're still trying to figure out. I don't want to rush into it, and come out of the gates, not as I really. So we kind of just started doing a newsletter in the meantime, so we can just kind of, gather data, and just, still be able to kind of help, have that help, build some momentum for the website. Obviously the website is the big picture here where, it'll have the ability to kind of do a lot of different things and, really be kind of like a leaf wire / LinkedIn / leaf link / Facebook / whatever you want to, name the social media platform, and just kind of roll it all into one. And, we believe we have, a pretty good network and a pretty good following to be able to do that. And, you can't rely on Facebook forever, right? And we're one post away from being taken down. I'm surprised we haven't been taken down yet. But we ultimately have to get it off Facebook and get it on a platform that we have control of. And so we're keeping busy, and then by day I do cannabis. I don't even know if you want to call it real estate, but I work for a commercial real estate company called NAI Farbman. It's based in Southfield. We've got offices in multiple states. And it's a full service commercial real estate company. They do property management, they do project management. They brought me on back in September as their first cannabis guy throughout the entire NAI platform, which has a couple hundred offices worldwide. And I'm very grateful for them taking me on as I am, and letting a cannabis guy like me into a mainstream commercial real estate company like them, and let me do what I do, right? Still have my events and do my my side hustles, and they're allowing me to kind of build a team here of people, and I've just hired my first guy from the
Mike
west side of the
Lametta.
state, Mike Lametta. Yeah,
So he goes back a little bit in our story.
I know that. I know.
Yeah. And I saw him at the Hot Box for the first time in a little while. Got to talk to him for a few. That was cool.
Yeah. So Mike is obviously a very knowledgeable guy. He knows, understands the day-to-day operations, the compliance, the regulation, things that I'm not as familiar with on a day-to-day basis. So he's a cultivator by trade and understands that game. And, so he's been a nice addition, and, just trying to really build teams and, bring on people that are that kind of believe in the vision and see, the potential.
Nice. And I know the Mike Khalil from Farman Group was able to speak with them. I don't come across them that often, but happened to after you made that connection with their company to start doing the cannabis side of stuff. So that was cool to talk to him about that for a minute.
Yeah, Mike is a commercial real estate OG. He's been around for 30 plus years. He's been here with this company for most of his career. And another thing about Mike is that he is one of the biggest receivers in the state of Michigan, which was one of the things that was kind of attractive about coming here. In addition to all a lot of other things, is Mike is eventually going to find his way in a receiver opportunity that which will eventually get myself and Mike involved. So that's something that obviously was very attractive, and that's something that we believe is going to be could be a key part of our business model going forward. But so far it's obviously still kind of a new term, and there's only a handful of 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever it is of companies that have gone into receivership that we know of. So it's still a rather new term and a rather new process for a lot of people, and it's not for a lot of people. It's because a lot of people don't have loans. That's a lot of people paid cash, and so it's an industry that obviously there's still plenty of people that it could affect, but yeah, the receivership game is very fascinating, and it's definitely not going away.
And certainly the next couple of years will be very telling ones for the Michigan cannabis market. For those who aren't familiar, the price of cannabis sunk quite rapidly. Although it seems to have leveled off over the last couple of months, it's really not moving in a positive direction. And it's entirely possible that it has more basement to go to and could drop even further. And that's caused a lot of cannabis companies in the state to have difficulty to close retail outlets or to forego opportunities for licensing or to actually just go belly up.
Yeah, being in debt and having very, very thin margins and saturated market is very difficult to wade through.
As we mentioned, the very slow rate of municipal participation when it comes to adding new retail locations has absolutely hampered an industry that expected to spread more rapidly, I think.
And so just I just want to throw in there, I know that this is official foray into this for Farming on a certain level, but they have dipped in and out of checking out certain cannabis scenarios throughout the years. Familiar with. So maybe the time got to be well enough for them, further enough into like more of a realized legal kind of a market in the state. And that was just good timing to come in and make it official. So I'm glad that seems to it's gone on for a little while now, and hopefully that continues. It seems like it's been working out. So I'm glad you made that connection.
Harry, is it true that a lot of the really big real estate companies just don't want to be involved in the cannabis game, or are most of the really big companies, employing people like yourself in order to get an insider's opportunity?
This the real estate game, and there's really not a whole lot of real estate other than retail and new municipalities. That's really the only new real estate or real estate transactions that there are. Everything else is really kind of like an asset sale right now. Retail is really the only segment that's that is desirable. There's not a whole lot of there's not a whole lot of demand in cultivation. You are seeing a lot of cultivation facilities that are, partially built out, fully built out, operational, that could be made available for sale. And every single one of them, the valuation of these is probably less than what they have into it, because there's really not, these aren't appreciating assets in most cases, they're depreciating. And, everything from the real estate to the furniture, fixtures, equipment, and build out is, all depreciating. A lot of these people overpaid for real estate. So, now cannabis real estate and non-cannabis real estate in terms of, industrial space is pretty much the same. There's really no cannabis tax anymore. Even in municipalities, like Warren, which is probably one of the most, desirable areas, in Metro Detroit. And so, these are really just, I when I have conversations with people who have grows, the first thing I ask them is, are you prepared to take a haircut? Are you prepared to take a loss? And if you understand that your asset is not worth what you have into it, then, then that's the first step of putting your property on the market or off market or whatever it is. But, unless you have a real viable brand where you have enough canopy space and you are truly a plug and play operation where, you have your, HR, and you have your social media, and you have your sales team, and you have your, you have good product, and you have a good name and a good following, and you're not sitting on inventory, then the brand has value, right? Otherwise, you're selling used light fixtures and used HVAC systems and used dehumidifiers. That's what you're selling. And, we all know that those don't have a lot of value other than, them being in those same places. So it's become, challenging. Processing is definitely doing better than, cultivation. Retail is still pretty active. Everybody wants retail. It seems like that is definitely the most, in demand product. But there's really only 3 ways to get into the retail game. Number one is, lobbying, right? Trying to get into a municipality that's about to opt in. And we all know what that looks like, right? We know Loom's going to get one. We know Common Citizen's going to get one, and then we know, two of the other, several other usual cast of characters are going to get them. And, unless you own that property in that municipality and get a, piece of that asset, the average guy, is not going to be able to get into a highly desirable municipality. So going into a municipality is one. The other way of getting into retail is acquiring an existing asset, right? And that becomes tricky because, let's just say, for example, this asset is in Genesee County. When did they, what municipality is it? How many licenses do they have? What about the surrounding communities? How many, obviously, we've all seen municipalities open it back up for more licensing, right? So just because a community has 4 today doesn't mean that they won't open it up to have 8 next year. Then you have neighboring municipalities that haven't opted in yet that could in the future. And, so, and then there's always, location, the physical location of the asset. Where is it located within the marketplace? Is it a good retail location, or is it, a little bit off the beaten path? Were they first to market? Were they 10th to market? The other way of getting into the system, getting into retail, is to go into a municipality like a Big Rapids or Bay City or Battle Creek, where, there are licenses available, there are opportunities available, you can get in cheaper, but it's a very competitive landscape. So, those are the, and when people are trying to sell their assets as an ongoing business, a lot of people have, an inflated value of what they believe that their asset is worth. And it's kind of like buying any business out there, actually, with adjustments, right? Because let's just say let's just say you want to go buy a ice cream store, right? That's making, $100,000 a year. So that business has a certain valuation based on the income stream, based on the history of how long that business has been there, based on how much money, capital improvements that it's going to require, based on, how volatile that industry is, right? And typically what you see is when you go buy an ice cream shop, there's a certain rate of return that you want to see as a mom and pop owner operator business, which is usually, 2 to 3 times earnings, right? That's typically what you would pay for an ongoing mom and pop business, retail business, or whatever business. You want to get your money back in 2 to 3 years. I mean, unless you're buying a portfolio of McDonald's, right? That's obviously a longer payout. But so now when you have cannabis, you have, no access to capital, traditional capital. You have overregulation, overtaxation, and, all the other challenges, the cannabis tax, if you will, all the other challenges that come with it. What is that business worth? Should it be worth more or less than an ice cream shop? And my answer is less. It should be less. The return should not take 3 years for cannabis because of how volatile it is. And you can see, you can see it with all these publicly traded companies. Their stocks are all down 80%, 90%, and all these investors that have put money into this industry, they've all lost their ass. They would never do it again. So it's everything is based on risk, right? The rate of return of your investment is based on risk, and there's nothing riskier than cannabis.
Mopman earlier had a comment Jamie put up asking about the Skyman auction, and if you back up in this recording about half an hour or so, that's when we talked about that. So
we hit it. Yeah, we wanted to talk to it. Hey, you know what? I do want to get to the True Leaf stuff. I know Stacy doesn't have forever, and I want to get into that. And Harry, you're welcome to hang out and be part of the future conversations. We can get back to a little bit of this. We covered some good ground on what you're up to and stuff. Is there anything else you want to make sure you get in
No,
the real
no,
estate
I,
network. Okay.
no,
And,
I
and
appreciate
direct anybody to your site, where My Canna Pros you can find on Facebook for sure, but there's also
Yep.
like other things you can get into. Okay. And if you're interested in some big time real estate discussions and opportunities and things like that, you can also be contacted and see what's going on in that world.
For sure, yeah. Give me a. I appreciate it, Jamie.
Yeah.
No, but you can hang out for the rest of the broadcast, Harry. We're just going to switch over to Stacy now. We hope you'll stay with us.
Yeah, you're welcome to hang out as much as you want. So, and Stacy, you were on last week. Shortly thereafter the show, you found out that TrueLeave, the company that was involved with the manufacturing plant in Massachusetts, in which there was a tragedy, is essentially pulling out of the state. So if you don't mind, give a little background on that stuff, and then where we are now, because that was very interesting.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. And Harry, thanks for all that info. You were very insightful
Yeah,
about that for sure.
Should have added that. That was really useful, actually. I appreciate
Very
that.
much so.
Also,
yeah. Definitely have some questions about Loom pulling out of Pine Knob, but save that one for later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a little recap. TrueLeave, multi-state operator. They have one cultivation facility or two cultivation facilities in Massachusetts and 3 dispensaries. So small in comparison to somebody like Skymint. But as of last week, Thursday morning, they decided, hey, guess what? We are pulling out of Massachusetts entirely. We are closing all of our facilities. We have no intention of reopening. Employees at the cultivation facilities the cultivation facility will be working for the next 30 days up until the end of June. And they are supposedly going to be paid until July 30th. At that point, everything is donezo. They are, boom, out of Massachusetts, which is going to leave 128 people without jobs. But also, there's some other things that came along with that. So Jamie mentioned the death of Lorna McMurray that happened in January of 2022. After she died, there were several OSHA violations that were put forth. And at the end of the day, when it came to those violations, one of the stipulations of the violations was, yes, there was monetary things. I think her death cost like $14,352, which was pennies. But also there was a stipulation that the cultivation facility had to do a health hazard evaluation. Originally, I had come on the show and said that, this was a study that was done by TrueLeave. At the time, I didn't really know what this study was or what it meant. In the press releases, it just said that there was a study that was to be done by TrueLeave. Turns out this study was going to be done by NIOSH, which is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, which is a government organization that is under the CDC and then under the Department of Health and Human Services. These NIOSH health hazard evaluations are super important. They take a while to do. This has taken a while for NIOSH to prepare for. This health hazard evaluation.
Is it fair to say when situations like this come around and they have like these extreme circumstances, this is something that they get interested in and want to like really know what the deal is and see if there's something there to fix? Is that like one of these investigations is results from, something unusual like this?
Correct.
Okay.
So OSHA required this of TrueLeave. So this has taken months for NIOSH to prepare for. This isn't just something where they come in, they jot some shit down and they leave. This takes months to prepare for, and then can take months to years in order to complete and finish. So this health hazard evaluation was set to start this week. There was also which I don't have as much information on, but there was also a NLRB, National Labor Relations Board trial that was set to start at the end of last week in regards to several of the things that had happened at the cultivation facility. So this is a big loss for the cannabis industry as a whole, because health hazard evaluations will get us to the point where people will stop getting sick. This is where all the things that we're discussing as far as what workers are experiencing, and the environments that the plants are growing in, this is where the data it can really kind of come from. So what happens during health hazard evaluation is that there's production processes are observed, right? Samples are collected from air quality to surfaces, and employees are not only interviewed, but they are given physical exams to really kind of determine over a period of time what they're being exposed to, how the things that they might be exposed to are affecting them. And then after the evaluation is conducted, then all of that data is analyzed. Once that data is analyzed, it is given to the employer, it's given to relevant departments, and it is then released to the public as well. NIOSH can't enforce these suggestions off of the evaluation that they compiled, but it can become a precedent for what we're doing in the future. So Trulieve in this situation, right, this was supposed to take place at the Mount Holyoke cultivation facility where Lorna died. They closed down the facility. Now, if they actually valued the knowledge and the data that would come out of this situation, they would say, hey, we operate in whatever it is, 6 other states. We can transfer this health hazard evaluation to another state to be able to conduct this research and kind of help the industry as a whole. But instead, nothing is really being done. So I think that we're really losing out on this aspect, and we're not getting down to the nitty-gritty of what happened in this cultivation facility. The eyes on the cultivation facility that were going to be there are now not going to be there. So Trulieve, in my opinion, is really not acting in the best interests of the public, of the consumer, and of the cannabis community, or the communities that they reside in.
So I'm showing this one again. They have like 100 stores or 90 stores or something like that in Florida. So
They have a
yes, sure.
dominant
Yes.
presence over 150 stores in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yes,
You know,
and they have
Stacey,
a ton
this-
of lawsuits in Florida as well.
Yeah, they do. This is just slightly off topic here, but you mentioned there was 30 days left for those people in the cultivation facilities. Can you imagine how sad of a 30 days that must be to serve out as you take these plants that you've lovingly helped to cultivate over all of these prior months, and you have to discard them? And
You're taking them down, yeah, because there's no.
as you're getting ready for this whole place to be dormant, you don't just leave plants there. You kill them. You can't transfer them because Trulieve's no longer going to be anywhere in the state. So that's just got to be the most grim 30 days any cultivation expert could potentially have to deal with.
Right, exactly. What these employees are going through, especially like the ones that have remained in that facility since Lorna's death, who were really looking forward to having not only their voices heard, but getting down to the fucking problems that we're dealing with here, like the real health problems that we're dealing with within these cultivation facilities. Is now here's another roadblock. It has to be incredibly disheartening. Danny Carson, who was Lorna's supervisor, and also one of the main whistleblowers at that facility, has really reached out to a lot of the workers there and has been doing a lot of great work, trying to help them and help them figure out like what is going on, what they can do, and what they've been experiencing since Danny has left the facility. He's been doing an awesome job, but at the same time, he was telling me he showed up the morning that they laid everybody off, and they laid everybody off. Everybody came in at 9 a.m. at the Mount Holyoke facility, and around 9:15, people were walking out. They sent everybody home for the day with pay. The pay thing also is another thing to discuss. So, Jamie, as you know, we discussed the WARN Act, right? The WARN Act, it has to do with the closure of large facilities. In the state of Massachusetts, companies are supposed to, when they're going to do a mass layoff, let the state know. And then that is to be published. I looked, and it's very easy to find this, by the way. I will send you the link. It's a very quick link to click on. It is updated weekly in the state of Massachusetts, who is doing mass layoffs. And True Leave did not report it to the state at all. However, they are complying sort of with the 60-day notice that is required by the WARN Act, that, workers are supposed to be given 60 days notice that they're going to be laid off. They are going to be providing, an additional 30 days of pay without them having to report to the facility. But that also, that isn't really putting any of these employees in a good financial position. From what, I've heard from some employees, is that in the area, not just in Mount Holyoke, but in the areas where the dispensaries are throughout the state, there really isn't much else opportunity. So, this might have been one of the higher paying opportunities that they had.
That's the case for cannabis in a lot of areas around Michigan too. You go to a little town and you're the only place paying, $15 to $20 an hour for stuff.
Right.
Exactly. Very much so, Jamie.
Yeah.
And that is going to rock these people financially.
So I can see making the decision, hey, we're pulling out. That changes some time frames over giving notice and stuff like that. Potentially, that I'm not trying to defend them on anything, but that's a different set of circumstances than staying there and laying people off. So maybe something there, but I guess we still haven't talked about why we think they all of a sudden decided we're getting the hell out of Massachusetts. Unless you did kind of say it.
They did it in order to corporately dodge the inspection that was going to expose
to dodge the big report that was
dangers that they had there, and that would then be
that's what I kind of was gathering, but I thought maybe we're okay, right.
So
They still have to do it though, because they go to another state. You said they still have to complete something, or they still have an obligation, or now they're leaving. They're thinking they're leaving the obligation to complete this.
They leave the obligation.
They had that's the thing. There was no requirement that the health hazard evaluation or any of the things that were required by OSHA per those settlements were to be carried over anywhere else.
Okay, that's what you said. Okay, that's what I'm just.
So and again, so when it comes to Truly's press release, they said this was strategic. The market is not well in Massachusetts, which that isn't a lie. It isn't. There has been closures of a lot of smaller cannabis businesses, including Pleasantries, by the way, which showed up in Massachusetts and closed pretty abruptly as well. So that's not a lie. However, they are pulling out, or they are closing 3 dispensaries in California as well, and they're pulling out of the wholesale in Nevada. True Leave, correct. Yeah. Now, with the dispensaries in California, I don't have any contact with anybody at those dispensaries, but there could have been union activity there as well. Why those 3 were chosen, not really sure. But it's very, very coincidental that they pull out of Massachusetts completely, and within a 60-day period, just before this health hazard evaluation was supposed to take place. This has been in the works for a while, and without giving any kind of heads up that, hey, this is what we're doing. It just seems odd, because also the police department in Mount Holyoke, I don't remember if it was the county or if it was a local municipality, did find significant hazards and issues within that facility, which was another reason why OSHA said that this health hazard evaluation needed to take place. So,
makes you wonder about the inspection process to get the license in the first place.
I'm sorry, Jamie, what was that?
No, it just makes me wonder about the inspection process to get the license in the first place.
Oftentimes just squeaky clean for your first one, and then you backslide throughout the years that you're open.
Okay.
Right, exactly. The Young Jerks, which is a podcast by Mike Crawford out there in Massachusetts, I can't remember if it was a guest or if it was somebody that had called in, a worker that had called in, but they'd pretty much said that they'd pulled out filters, like HVAC filters that were covered in mold. That these were managers that were like, look, listen, why aren't these things being replaced? Like this should be just regular maintenance, and these things weren't
SOP
being
for it. Yeah.
done. Like, I mean, just basic things that should be taken care of that just weren't being done. So if, I don't think that would be easy to clean up prior to a investigation like this. But nonetheless, it is disheartening to know that this isn't going to take place, and they are not voluntarily trying to move this to any any of their other facilities, especially in Florida, where there is a lot going on down there. There's a class action lawsuit. A worker also died in Florida from, I believe, heat exposure. I'm not sure if it was an indoor or outdoor grow. It was a gentleman in his 60s. There has not been nearly as much coverage of that. I'm not sure if the gentleman was a citizen of the US or not. That is another thing, that there are a lot of health issues that are going on in other states, like, specifically Florida, or maybe where they have outdoor cultivation, where there's a lot of illegal immigrant work that is being used. And when there are issues that occur, they're not being reported. They might be reported down the line because somebody finds out about it, but not in a timely manner. And here we are.
Violations that you're talking about, Stacy, especially in Massachusetts, are even more egregious when you consider exactly how large Trulieve is and how much money they have. So they clearly had the bread to be able to properly take care of their facilities. So you have to wonder, at what point is it willful or even criminal negligence at that point in failing to maintain? Because clearly, if you have the capability and you choose not to, that's something you're culpable for.
They're avoiding a list of potential issues. It sounds like they just slid.
Well, I would guess that the reason they pulled out of California is because the health codes there are so strong when it comes to the environmental codes are so strong that they wouldn't have been able to pass any inspections in California.
But they only pulled out of, they only closed it. So California, they're only closing 3 dispensaries, 3 specific dispensaries. That's it. Not cultivation, has nothing to
How
do with
many left? How big is our presence remaining?
I don't know, but we can look that up right now. I believe it's larger than that. But the fact that they're also pulling out of the wholesale in Nevada, like, obviously this is strategic. You're a large business. This is a very volatile market, but it seems like that they're skating things as well. Skirting them.
Trying to avoid scrutiny in places where they know that they've been doing bad shit.
Not only scrutiny, but fines. And I mean, again, like, this health hazard evaluation could be, or could have been, incremental to educating everybody else, to being like, hey, other cultivation facilities are having issues with A, B, C, D, and E. This could have provided solutions for those.
Yeah, the bad publicity for them, the fines, the lawsuits, the list of things that you believe they're avoiding by pulling out of there wasn't working.
And again, we don't know for sure that they've actually done any bad things in other places. However, when you're looking at past behavior, it's the best predictor of future behavior. So when we see that things skated in some places, it's more likely that they skated in a lot of places, especially.
Harry, I'm sorry, Rick. Harry, were you trying to say something before? I'm sorry. Were you trying to get in on this?
By the way, there's one location left in California, one Trulieve location. That's on their website.
So almost fully pull it. So do they have any cultivation facilities in California?
California is another market.
They do. If they do, and they only close the dispensaries, then I mean, look at Redbud Roots, right? Like they let go of their retail sector. So I mean that, again, there's restructuring.
Coincidentally, where I sit right now is where Redbud Roots was going to open up a store, and where they are no longer.
And so who is now, Jamie?
Meds Cafe is opening up here in Big Rapids, and soon right after in Sheboygan. The Souza is turning over their operation to us and maintaining their stuff closer to Detroit. The far northern one is one they wanted to let go of. So we are happily getting in on that one too. That one has a staff ready to go. This one we're starting from scratch. All will be going in a few days.
Meds Cafe just growing.
4 to 6 in a few days, yep. And then there's more after that too. We'll have to wait till that time comes and we'll talk about that. But this is an opportunity for some people, such as the people at Meds Cafe and Josh, very insightful. And they find places that don't require as huge of a risk to give a try to. And with the formula of high quality cannabis at lower prices, we get it even at saturated places, and we get a little share often, but without the huge risk. So hopefully that turns out to be the case here too. So far, there's a lot of excitement. I know we're going to be one of the only ones, maybe the only one, but one of the only ones with like a deli style around here. We know the consumers really like that. So that's one distinguishment.
Yes, deli style all day. No more pre-packs, please.
And of course, the problem with prepackaged cannabis is oftentimes you don't know how long it's been there. Even if you have your special glasses on and you can read the small print that appears on the back of the cannabis packaging. Oftentimes, prepackaged just sits on the shelf for a long time. But
some brands are reliable, but people do prefer looking at it and smelling it.
Prepack can sometimes stretch for a long time, but deli style means you're getting fresh cannabis right out of a jar every time.
Yeah, and you see it and can connect with it, and sometimes people like to. Yeah,
you still can't touch it though.
You can't touch it. No.
I know. I used to love to squeeze my bud, to squeeze the nugs and see what it's like, but you can do almost everything else.
You still can't break a bud open and see if it has that odor.
We always can find something to complain about.
No, I think it's great. I'm a big fan of deli style. I mean, but there's a bunch of things you can't do, which
You can't do those things with pre-pack either. So when you look at the two options for sale, it's pre-packed or it's fresh packed, and the fresh packed.
And there was the CRA meeting last year, either last year or 2 years ago, in which they posed that question. A lot of people weighed in.
With deli style in the retail environment, you also have the opportunity to put small jars out. You don't have to fill a wall full of one brand. You can buy smaller amounts. I mean, I see all kinds of positives. I would only open deli style if I was.
I will say that oftentimes deli style cannabis comes in a great big prepackage, and then they dump it from the big heat sealed prepackage that came from the processor, and then they put it into jars to sell it out. But it is still a fresh batch every time. So that's the important thing, and being able to experience the sensory part of that whole sales experience, as opposed to just seeing somebody's logo, a big MKX flaming horse on the packaging, that pollutes the walls in every place I go. When you can actually get involved in it with your nose, with your eyes.
I do have a question for those of you in the game. Is the metric sticker somewhere? Where's the metric sticker in deli style?
When they sell you deli style, they put it into a package, and then the printer prints out the metric tag at that time, and it goes on the package that you've purchased. So you get all the information.
There's an associated metric tag or data or something like that,
but you can't see the metric. You can't see the metrics until you've basically purchased it or made your selection.
I'm sure they could. That's all on the computer right in front of them. If they scanned the barcode that's on the jar, I'm sure they would be able to answer any questions you have.
In fact, we can find that out exactly, and there, the people here that can answer that question in a minute.
think you're right.
No, I'm just curious. I mean, it tells you who tested it, tells you when it was cropped out, it tells you when it was tested, it tells you when it was packaged. I like to know what I'm smoking, how long it's been sitting there.
That is
we tend to try to have a certain time frame on moving the stuff through. If it gets to be even much lower amount of days than a lot of people I think consider, we lower price.
Jamie, does your point of sale system with Meds Cafe allow you to see how old your inventory is so that you can identify the oldest members and then bring them out for sale? Or does it not sort data in that way?
I believe it does. And that's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. That would make it a lot easier to get rid of your older stuff if the computer was to tell you exactly which.
If the flower gets to be older, we lower price on it, to reflect that and to move it, so.
Yep. Of course, we know THC degrades over time. Go ahead, Stacy.
No, to go back to Adam's question, when it comes to the deli style, so working at dispensary, when it comes to like scanning the product, we never had deli style where I worked. Everything was pre-packed, but even, so on the pre-packed, it has, all of that information about where it's been tested at, the date, blah, blah, blah. Deli style, I have gone to dispensaries where that was deli style, and I got home and I looked at the label and none of that information was provided on there. The only thing that was provided on there was the strain, the percentage, and possibly the AU or processor license number, but there was no testing on there as far as like where it was tested or anything like that. So, I don't know if that's a violation of anything, whatever, but it's, I guess it depends on where you go.
So this is Noah. He's been working as inventory manager at the Alpena store for long before that in Rogers City, but most recently at the Alpena store. He's here now in Big Rapids to be the first manager of this store. He's helping get everything set up for open, which we might be able to get to some sales this weekend, possibly. Depends on how everything lines up. And then we'll do like more of a promoted grand opening type thing later in June, probably June 23rd, 24th with vendors and stuff like that. But they have some questions about knowing when product was fresh or when it came aboard. If we keep track of that, if you can look into trees, for example. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of that information will just be on the the certificate that's in metric with most of the products. It'll tell you like harvest date.
So you're looking at the jar though, for example, you don't have access to like a bunch of packaging stuff. Somebody could still look it up and tell you.
It'll have harvest date on trees on the actual barcode that we scan for flower, and that's we put on display. So you can always be like, oh, yeah, this is from April 24th or whatever, so it's helpful. Customers like it. Gives it a little more transparency.
So we're talking about deli style versus prepackaged too. You think our customers prefer the way we do it?
Yeah, I'm not biased when I say I like the deli style. I've grown up in it for a few years, but I think customers react to it pretty positively. Hear them complaining more about prepackaged products, or they want to be able to have like a more tangible relationship with the product. So having deli style, having it open, wafting it, and everything is positive.
I mean, but you understand, and of course you're involved in this every single day, how important it is to get that extra sensory input in order to secure a sale of a particular cannabis, and also for some of the bad, necessarily not very smelly cannabis to not get purchased as much. But
you can't hear, can you?
I
I'm sorry. You know what?
okay.
I've been using headphones, but he's been trying to hear nicely. Just putting up with it without telling me to take them off. So if you don't mind, repeat that real quick, Rick.
I was just saying, it's so important to the consumer to be able to make that connection with their nose and with their eyes to actually get right in there and see it. And I can understand where sometimes pre-pack is a little more disappointing, especially when someone proposes to buy a quarter, which is a very small amount of cannabis, or an eighter. You can't even really open an eighter up and get any sense of smell. There's just not enough cannabis there to really get you a good scent load. So pre-pack just makes the big difference. I'm sorry, deli style just makes a big difference for those sales, I think. I mean, you've been around. You think that's the same thing too?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, even from a small thing like packaging, we save a lot of money on not just having to package every single. I mean, we go through pounds and pounds of flour and having to pre-pack grams or 2 grams or eighths. That's hundreds of little pieces of plastic that we have to pay for, and any little thing can help. But also, besides that,
I agree with Maria here. It's important for a consumer to be able to smell the cannabis.
yeah,
And you kind of get a connection with it, like for particularly those people who might be a little more sensitive. It might not be completely scientific right now. I was a bud tender for like 7 years. I saw it, at least anecdotally, when somebody really likes something that they're smelling and maybe even visually even appreciating, it's typically a good choice.
Here's the other thing too, is that in order for a customer to become a client, in order for them to actually become loyal to your retail location, they have to develop a connection with the personnel that are there. So when you have someone who's actually pulling out a jar and wafting it and describing the effects and things like that, they're developing a relationship, not just necessarily making a sale. When someone pulls a couple of pre-packs off the shelf and sets them on the counter in front of there, that's a very McDonald's-like transition. But what you really want is to have more human time with those people. And I know in some locations they're so busy that they just want to push people over and cycle the particular cash register as quickly as possible. But whenever you can, slow it down, talk to your people, and get to know them and have that connection. I mean, I've seen it when I work in different facilities and different retail locations. People come in and they wait for certain tenders. They wait for their certain friend, and they're greeted as if they're really tight, even if they only ever see them at the dispo. That's what you need. That's how you differentiate yourself from 16 other places in your city.
People come in here and they want to have a deeper conversation on stuff. Our crew here is prepared to have it with them. Some people do want to, as kind of get in and out of there. What do you got, Adam?
Well, I just going to say it's very similar to a car dealership where guys buy cars from the same guy over and over and over and over because they've already built up that relationship, and they can take their word the next time they come in. And I can see why deli style is the way to go. It just so happened I grew up in a delicatessen. So the only complaint I have for deli style is, in the delicatessen, you cut a piece off and you hand it to the guy. And you say, is this good? You like this?
Well, the thing with deli style is if you are a high volume location, you have to be prepackaged. You can't be deli style.
Right.
Well, I mean, it is set up to be as efficient as possible, but you can't avoid the extra step of weighing it out, putting it in the package.
Just keeping, turning the customers over. I mean, that's not what the business is based on, but as far as the consumer goes, but as far as the operator goes, if you're high volume, you're definitely going to see more customers in a day. If you are prepackaged and you don't have to put everything in.
Longer, but the system I don't think is as incredibly inefficient. And for the appeal to one place over another, it's probably worth it. There are times maybe there's a situation like on a border town or something like that. That's just
Yeah.
Vibe Inkster is so jamming every single time. There's always a line of at least 12.
Then there are some companies like Redemption, for example, in which you could get like half of the prepackaged and half of it.
Is Vibe deli, or are they prepackaged, Rick?
They're prepackaged for the same reason that you just expressed.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't quit.
Yeah.
But for example, if it was like completely jamming, and that is that extra step. Do you see that?
Yeah, but I think, like you say about the deli style, it does take an extra step, but that gives us time to build that relationship with the customer. And that gives us the time to say, hey, how's your day going?
But then again, if there's 20 people waiting right behind that person, then we're kind of like,
it's a fine balance. I think that's a balance with every industry. You have to be able to kind of cater to the customer while also being time effective.
In those places like Vibe and the border towns and stuff, then they're going to have to move into it for practical purposes. You might have to abandon it just because that's reality. And I understand kind of what Harry's saying. But
Yeah,
this,
but of course, if you're taking more time with your guest while there's a 20-person wait, that wait stretches out, and people don't appreciate being made to wait like that. So pushing people through is a totally valid business model. In some
it is, but we don't do that. We don't like push, like, if somebody needs the time, we give it to them, you know,
Yeah.
otherwise,
Well,
the goal isn't to like have the person behind them watch us just push them through. I mean, we don't want to have somebody witness that type of bad customer service either. But
And-
yes, if you're stuck with that many people, man, that's maybe a good problem to have.
It's a big trade-off, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever your philosophy is, but we have ours, and I like ours.
Adam?
I would think if we all live long enough, and Stacy would hate me for saying this, but we're going to get to the point where you walk in somewhere, you decide what you want, you push a button, it deli style fills the bag with the amount you requested, prints out the label, kicks it out the bottom, and we're done.
Like a vending machine, like the guy in Detroit.
Yep.
I know, I was thinking that same thing too,
Hey.
Harry.
The guy in Detroit.
Crazy.
That was
Right.
brilliant.
Four
And we've
years
seen
back-
vending machines.
$2,000 a day or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We've seen vending machines in European countries and also
Oh,
in
yeah.
some
Sure,
places here
it's
in
not
the
a new
United States.
concept.
They exist. But the
I'm
reason that
saying
they're
a deli style. I'm saying a deli style machine, where literally every day your machine could have different flavors in it. And
but
Hey,
with
it's
the
all about automation, right? It's they'll figure out a way to automate that.
but one of the biggest selling points for opening a retail location in a municipality is the number of jobs you're generating. And when we talk about automation, we're defining fewer jobs. So at some point, you've made a promise to the community that you're going to do this for them, and then through automation, you've kind of reneged on that promise. So in some instances, I think people have to be real careful about what they trim out.
this will be something brought to the United States, not created in the United States.
Yep. I think you can convert pretty much any current vending machine that takes buckalodians, takes dollar bills, into something like that. They got the big curly spires. You just push out banana kush right to the bottom,
I could jack that machine in 2 seconds.
Sure, yeah. But if you walk inside a building, which is through a secure
Right.
entrance, and there's a dozen of those machines, and a guy, in a uniform watching everybody, then
Yep.
Jamie, you are on mute if you did not know that. Actually, this is kind of fun that Jamie's on mute.
It is actually kind of comical.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming he's trying to talk to us, but
Oh, no. We're seeing the showroom. Just looking for that mute button.
And of course, talking while muted, and then hearing.
yes, we were making fun of you.
Here's Harry coming
That's
back.
what we do. Yes.
All right.
There's Harry.
We are typically a very efficient, nice but no frills, what's best for the consumer, high quality cannabis at low price kind of a place. And we also think that our involvement in the history with cannabis efforts and ongoing attention in that regard is another thing that's kind of distinguishes us too. So I really like being with these guys and this company for all those reasons, and that gives us a shot of working in some of these tougher markets, I think. So Big Rapids is going to be a challenge, but we have a couple things going for us. Are you up for it, Noah?
We're number one.
We're number one.
I didn't come here to be number two. You know what I mean?
If you're not first, you're last.
True.
So a few days, some sales should start. We should have some more of a celebratory push off here toward the end of the month. And this is where
Soft opening maybe this weekend, you said.
Yeah, yep. We got some inventory coming in. We're going to go live on our system. All the hardware is in place and inspections done and so forth. So yeah, it's exciting.
Good luck.
I appreciate it. Well, we'll need it. And also, some of our other places are kind of seasonal small towns, and the summer's a great time because those populations, double, triple, quadruple. This is a little town, not necessarily on the water. It supports a little college, and a lot of the population, a lot of the students have left now. So we're coming in here at a tough time. We did that with the botanical company in East Tawas too. We actually started like in October, after the summer population increase went away. So up against some challenges here, but that comes with the territory. And we know what's going on. So looking forward to it nonetheless. And, we have a fair chance at it. We're doing some good training tomorrow. So people are coming up here to offer up some presentations and stuff. And some of the stakeholders and a couple of other executives are coming in to kind of meet and greet and have discussions with everybody here. And we're all going to gather informally in town at somebody's house. And
Does Mets Cafe have a grow, Jamie, or are they just retail?
There's a affiliated cultivation places in Rogers City and Manistee. Manistee might not be up and running yet, but it might be. And it's called Faded Acres right now. It's just getting up and running, so it'll be more of a thing. A few harvests probably, although I'm not directly involved. But I hear a lot of stuff about it. It sounds like they're doing some good stuff there. So I, along with everybody, will see what's going on before too long. But yeah, there's affiliated cultivation. Where's Jamie? We are in Big Rapids. Oh, Jamie T. Who's Jamie T? Maybe that's slang, maybe. That's me. I don't know if that's somebody else, but if it's me, I'm in Big Rapids on Michigan Avenue, 225 South Michigan Avenue. Meds Cafe. And this is Meds Cafe in Cedar Springs that used to be connected with this chain. It split off. Some of the people who used to work together, now they don't. There's no animosity, but it's not directly affiliated. And I think that place is changing their name before too long, too. AI is going to take over. Yeah. And no, I goofed with that T, so that was me. All right. So anyway, I appreciate everybody's participation and stuff, and this is exciting. And then I'll be up in Sheboygan too before too long. We'll look at that. That's kind of a really cool situation as well. We're in a lot of those markets, More.
Did you guys take over the Sozo? Is that what you guys are doing there?
Sozo and Sheboygan, yeah.
Okay.
That was in the works months ago, and then there's some different things went down. Didn't happen, and then it came back around. So it is going to happen now for sure.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to that one too. The people there, the existing crew, I've just talked to them on the phone, but they all seem really cool, knowledgeable, capable. So I'm definitely looking forward to that and meeting them a little bit more next week after we get this going. So we got a few minutes left. Harry, is there anything else you want to get in for sure or comment on? Looks like Stacy had to leave. She was actually, behind schedule based on staying a little bit longer than she intended. But just before we wrap it up, Harry, you got to tell people again about the page or anything else that you'd like to get in before we.
Yeah, we covered a lot. I appreciate the opportunity, guys. I think this is my first time on your show, so I've finally made it. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your guys' involvement in my events and in your support, and having me on. And I look forward to continuing our good relationships.
Yeah. Well,
Harry, how can they reach you at Farbman? What would be the way that they could do that?
Just call me on my cell, 248-231-9000.
The Binford 9000.
That's a great number.
Yeah, I've had it for like 30 years.
Nice. I have had my same number now, getting close to that too. Close to 30 years.
Yeah.
Adam, anything you want to make sure you get in? I mentioned how Farbman kind of dabbled in stuff earlier. I thought you were going to jump in on that, but
Yeah, no, actually, real quick, today I went to the heart doctor, and he was pro cannabis, which I thought was pretty interesting.
nice.
He was pro smoking it. However, he was anti-edible.
Okay.
And his reason being that his brother-in-law, who was a doctor, dosed himself eating eating
We
the
all know that story, yeah.
eating the brownies at the cabin over the weekend while
The
he
demon cakes, yeah.
up there, and you know, the kids at school and stuff. But he was certainly pro cannabis, and I said, you know, that's funny because they always talked about how it makes your heart rate, and it wasn't good for you. You know, makes your heart
There
rate.
was just a study that came out that concluded no link to COPD issues, even with chronic long-term use.
Right. So, you know, today was a good day.
Good for you, man.
We had a good laugh with the doctor.
And
Well, that's
BR
not
Bud, man, if you're in Big Rapids, you know, hanging out here a little bit. So, you know, I'd like to try out cannabis. If you want to burn a little bit. But anyway, good news, Adam. You know, I know you've done a roller coaster with health stuff.
It's
Back, heart, diabetes, what, you know, many things. And you're still pumped.
my body has outlived my lifestyle.
Yeah. You're a little slowed down and humbled these days. But
It's all right.
that's where you are. Anyway, I appreciate everybody who came on during the day today too. Some other people may have made it on, but we didn't quite get there. There's a Spark in the Park this weekend. I'll be hitting that. The guys from Cannabis Council and some others. Justin Palmatier and Doja is very involved, and Adam Scott Green and so forth. So I'm looking forward to hanging out a little bit there this weekend. Assuming you guys may be going too. Anyway, if you don't mind, another good show. Rick, wrap us up.
Boy, we talked about a lot of current events. We talked about unfortunate contraction in the industry. But we also talked about some really successful things like Meat Connect Puff and the Spark in the Park, which by all indications looks like it's going to be a banger this weekend. There's so much reason to be positive, and the summer is being so kind to us, although we could use some rain. You just got to get out and enjoy community. I mean, yes, going to events is participating in things, but it's about community. And go out and make those summertime friends, take those summertime trips, and enjoy yourself in a cannabis way.
That sounds great and much appreciated again. We're just doing prep work, but this is 225 South Michigan. So we're not open, but this is where we are, as BR Bud asks, as I hinted toward you smoking some cannabis. So be here for a little bit and appreciate it again. And see you guys next week. Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Peace.